With such impressive evidence, Fisher embarked on a journey to validate the claims of the guides. Had they lived previous lives?
Joe's involvement and that became quite enhanced. He had decided at that point that this was something unique and marvelous, and that he was going to write a book on channeling and bring out all of this wonderful information that we were given, and actually go and source these various entities. I mean, you have to realize that there was 25 or 30 people in this time had been involved, and each one of them had guides, and each one of these guides had lifetimes and backgrounds, and he was going to find proof of Russell's existence and proof of his guide's existence, and that was going to be part of the book, and that was going to substantiate this wonderful information.
Fisher's first trip took him to England, where Aviva's spirit guide, Russell Parnick, claimed to have lived as an 18th century sheep farmer.
He spoke about living near the village of Heathfield in Yorkshire, and the village, I visited it. It was there just as he had described, just a few houses and a little church, this sort of thing. And Russell spoke about the Druids' stones nearby, which were half a day's ride away on horseback, you know, touchingly evoked in last century language, and that was there just as he said. He said he had a 22-acre farm. I wasn't able to find the farm, but he said that the farm abutted onto the Burn Gill, which was a little stream that ran into the larger Nidderdale River, and the stream and the river were there. However, when I came to the litmus test again of finding Russell Parnick, I searched high and low in the records, in the church records, in the government records. He was nowhere to be found.
Another guide, Ernest, claimed to have been a bomber pilot with the Royal Air Force in 99 Squadron in World War II. Once again, Fisher went to great lengths to prove this claim, even interviewing surviving members of the squadron, only to leave disappointed.
Now, most of the historical and geographical information he had provided was accurate, was there. There's only one problem. Ernest, the bomber pilot, did not exist. I couldn't find him in the records. So I came back to Toronto, and I told him I was much impressed with the fact that all this information was there. There was just this one problem, that I couldn't find him. Then he went into a great song and dance about karma, how he has a charge sitting in his room who he must look after. And he had realized too late that the information he was giving me might be detrimental to the welfare of his charge, who was on the earthbound plane, and he had decided, he said, to change the information, to backtrack. Now, I argued with him at great length. I said, you could have told me this before I left if you'd felt this. And even so, you started off by giving me your name before you'd had this change of mind, and the name that I was looking for was just not in the records. And he weaseled and whined and invoked the higher laws. So he got out of it. But the question remained with me. Was Ernest telling the truth? Was he not? I will have to check out other guides to find out whether this is true or not.
The obvious choice of guides to investigate was his own Philippa, whom he had come to trust as a result of his personal effort to make contact.
You see, initially, Philippa encouraged me to contact her, and that she said that rather than just go through a medium, the best way to contact your guide was directly. And she said that if I concentrated on her every day for 15 minutes or more, that I would be able to make this contact after a period of time. And so every morning I would go up to my study, and I would train myself, my mind, on making contact with her. Nothing happened for weeks and weeks and weeks, but eventually an image of a woman walking towards me in a white wrap was presented to my inner vision. And I was convinced that this was Philippa, and my response was to weep, and I cried for several minutes. And again, when I went back to the group, Philippa, I didn't have to say anything. Philippa said, you see, we have made contact. And again, this was another one of the bricks in the wall.
So he said, well, yeah, he was going to go off, and his guide, who loved him dearly and certainly would not deceive him, had given him all this information, and he had maps and research, and he was going to go and find her. He couldn't find Russell, you know. The entity known as Russell had never been born in that parish or lived in that place, but enough of it fitted. I mean, he knew the general area, same as Ernest knew about World War II bombers and things like that. But Joe knew that he could never be deceived by his guide.
Now, I then went to Greece looking for Philippa, and a similar thing happened. I was looking for the village of Theros, which she had said was only 5 days' walk away from the Black Sea, again touchingly evoked in the old ancient language, which made me believe her initially. I went to the town of Alexandroupolis in northeastern Greece, and it was there that the edifice on which her testimony was based on, which was already crumbling because of the failure of her colleagues to pan out. I had expected Alexandroupolis to be an ancient city based on Alexander the Great, and when I went there, I found that it wasn't, and that in fact that Alexandroupolis was only built, I think it was at the beginning of this century, at the end of the last century, and Philippa was talking about it having existed in her day, and this could not have been. So I carried on my search there, looking for more clues to her existence. But Philippa, even though her Greek had been veridical, Philippa too went the same way, and it was a wrenching disillusionment for me.